prefer to hand it in. So if anybody would like to have paper to write on, we have no questions paper prepared for you and a pencil. We'd be happy to give that to you now while I'm getting the handout.
Thanks, Ellen.
I'll do the handouts. Those are there. Well, let me get them now. Spanish, if there's any fun Spanish meeting. Those are Spanish meeting.
Tell us, is Tracy ready to start?
Okay. Well, you're on. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me here, Zanta, and everyone else. As Phyllis said, my name is Tracy Taris, and I'm a therapist here in town. And today I will be talking about stress and anger management and relaxing through the holidays. What you will learn today is how to manage frustration so that they do not become huge angry outbursts. How to de-escalate your thoughts that lead to frustration and fear. How to understand the power of self-care and how it helps you to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. Understand the relationship between stress and anger. Most people think anger is just an emotion that they feel, but a lot of times before you blow up, there's been a lot of stress that's going on. And so you'll figure out before and after measures to put in place so that you don't go there. So this is the CDC's list of how we respond to stress. Some of the top things that we worry about are our health, finances, and job, changes in eating and sleeping habits. We develop difficulty concentrating. We have health problems that get worse over time, and mental health conditions. And a lot of this can lead to depression and then an unhealthy way of coping. Like we just get into a mode of being that becomes our new norm if we're not really aware and thinking about it. My apologies that it's going off the screen, but some of the ways that you can do really good health care or self-care is making sure you get plenty of sleep. Like I always tell my clients that the quality of your day actually begins the night before. And so having a good sleep hygiene regimen in place to make sure that when you wake up in the morning, you're ready to go instead of carrying stressors from one day to the next into the next day, and you're like already operating on a deficit. Eating healthy. There's so much out there now, so many different diets, clean eating and whatever, like not everything is for everyone. So like just try different diets and see what your body likes. If you sleep well on it, if you feel good on it, it probably is for you. Some of the diets are not for everyone. So paying attention to how you feel when you eat, and then don't eat anything that's not agreeable with you. Of course, exercise. Exercise is good for not only our physical health, but also our mental health. Because whatever's going on with us physically will eventually spill over into our mental health due to worry or due to the idea that your emotions can only hold so much in your emotional mind, and so it eventually spills over into your body. So they kind of have an impact on each other. Have a source of joy with the holidays coming. Hopefully, most of us will have a source of joy, just looking forward. I know my grandbaby is coming from Oregon on Christmas Day, and I go for temple. That's gonna be my little source of joy all Christmas and into the new year. Make sure you're connecting with people, and it's always a good idea to make sure you're always learning something new, always having a dream to move forward and something that you're aspiring to, something that you don't know that you want to know. And then avoid negativity. Like if there's people in your life that you have to be around, just set boundaries within yourself if they have a lot of negativity. It doesn't mean that you have to absorb that, and then figuring out ways to do that. And then lastly, one really good source of self-care is talking through your fears, not letting things just sit in your mind. So you want to have an action plan where you write down, what am I, like if you find yourself worrying and fretting, write down what it is you're worrying and fretting about. Because a lot of times when you see it in black and white, you can also see, oh, I can take care of that. Like, or I have these tools, or I have these resources, and this can be taken care of. Like when things are swimming in the back of your mind, it makes you more stressed than you need to be. Like when you have an action plan, you know that you can challenge whatever the thoughts are and put something into place. If you, whatever you're doing, whether you're working for yourself or, you know, working a 9 to 5, make sure you schedule breaks throughout the day. Like most employers will give you a lunch break that's anywhere from a half hour to an hour, but most employers also give you 2 15-minute breaks a day. And most of us don't take advantage of that. Like a lot of us will eat lunch at our desk and work through. We really should not do that because you're not doing yourself a favor nor your employer. But even those of us that take lunch breaks, most of us don't take those 2 15-minute breaks a day. And so like in an 8-hour work day, that's an hour and a half of breaks that you can take advantage of. And you want to, like I said, like whenever there's things in the back of your mind and swimming around, it causes more anxiety than needs to be. So focusing on like specific things that you can do at one time. When I was younger, multitasking or the ability to multitask was a big, huge thing to put on your resume. That's all been debunked, and you know, it's not good to multitask because you're not giving your best because you can't be your best. Your brain can only focus on one thing at a time. Now, your mind is a different thing. You can have your mind on a lot of different things, and that's what causes stress and anxiety, but you are the controller of your mind and you can make it zero in on one thing at a time. But basically, specifically for behaviors, you can only do one thing at a time. So you want to try to write down a weekly plan of action. I once saw this Motivation Monday clip from this guy. I forget what his name is, but he recommended taking 15-20 minutes on the weekend and planning your whole week out, like looking at your calendar and writing down what it is you want to get accomplished that day. And for me, what that looks like is because I have a private practice, I can set my schedule the way I want to. And so what I usually do is I block my clients from like 1 to 5 or 1 to 6, but the morning is free to do other stuff like, you know, write my book or write articles or whatever. And then the evening is free for family stuff, but I plan it by writing it down. I don't know, going backwards.
Back here,
Okay, yeah.
is that correct?
That's correct, I think. Okay, so some of the healthy ways to cope, if you feel like you've reached, you know, your threshold of what it is you can manage and what it is you can handle, it's good to consult a health professional, whether that's a therapist or, you know, someone, a wise friend. I mean, a wise friend is not a health professional, but sometimes a friend that has a lot of wisdom that knows you, that's a good source to go to talk through what some of the things are. If you're connected to a faith community, most faiths will have pastoral type counselors available to help you. Nowadays, because of COVID, I mean, we've always had telehealth, but telehealth is a really big thing now because of COVID. Like our practice went on telehealth completely during COVID. Now we offer a hybrid where some of our clients we see on telehealth and some we see in our offices. But you want to take care of your emotional health because it helps you to be more responsible. It helps you to react responsibly and to think clearly instead of reacting out of stress or anxiety. And each day give yourself time to unwind, but unwind throughout the day, like taking those breaks here and there, and then having a specific amount of time to unwind at the end of the day as well. And you want to make sure that you're always connecting to other people. I learned about the stress threshold when I worked at Child and Family Center as an intern. And we talked about it from the standpoint of, you know, people that have like schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia. But what one of my supervisors told me was that we all have a stress threshold. And that resonated because I noticed that with the families that, you know, we all have it. And your stress threshold is basically, I don't know why it's doing this. It's like going backwards. Oh, hold on. Your stress threshold, I'm doing it. I'm sorry. I'm just doing it wrong. The stress threshold is the amount of stress you can handle before you pop, basically. And so we all respond that way to our, like if this is your threshold and then you have work and then a kid that's going off the rails, a husband that's going off the rails, and then, your clients or your friends, and then once you get up here, that's when you start to lose it. And we all respond to it in a different way. Some people might start drinking or taking drugs. Some people might start working more. Some people get emotionally upset and just have a lot of anger and hostility. Your eating and sleeping patterns might change. And the thing about the stress threshold is once you've crossed it, sometimes you can think you have depression because some of those symptoms are the same as depression, but you want to talk with someone to kind of rule out what's really going on with you. Somatic symptoms, that's really important. I kind of talked about it earlier when I was talking about, we have an emotional mind and there's only so much we can hold there. And a lot of times I'll have clients that come from doctors because the doctor is looking for what's going on with the person and there's no medical or physical reason. And so then the doctor will assess that this is probably an emotional thing. And so then they'll send them to a therapist because what has happened is the emotionality has started to spill over into your body. And that resonates like there's pains, like phantom pains. I mean, they feel real and they are, but it really is your emotions spilling over into your body. So you'll either have pain, like sometimes people's hair will fall out. Sometimes you'll have skin conditions like dry, itchy skin and things like that. But it's really, you need to get it together with what's going on emotionally. So some of the components of anxiety is just the general feeling of being ill at ease or feeling ill at ease. You might start having obsessive and irrational thoughts. And Phyllis has a copy of this. If anybody wants a copy, just ask her to, and she can email it to you. So you don't have to like try to frantically take notes, but Phyllis, feel free, to send it to anyone who, and I sent you a PowerPoint version. But the physiological symptoms we were talking about that are like somatic symptoms, and just sometimes people can start to feel like they're not good enough, no matter how good they are in their job or how much their family appreciates them, how much their coworkers appreciates them. You can start to feel like you're just not good enough. And all of this can lead to depression. So let's get into some of the self-empowerment tools and techniques to help you. Oh, I'm doing it again. Okay, so we can transcend anxiety. Like we don't have to stay in anxiety. And there are 4 steps to this. Understand that, like this is what you'll be thinking about. So understand that when you're feeling anxious, it's information. Like you just try to figure out what the information is. Like, why am I feeling anxious? What are the thoughts I'm having? And you want to acknowledge its presence. Like most of us try to escape anxiety by engaging in something or distracting ourselves, but just acknowledge that it's there. It doesn't have to rule or control you. It could be in the car, but just don't let it drive. And then take a few breaths to get yourself to calm down, because when anxiety is on board, if you're not paying attention, your breath is probably rapid or shallow. So just take note of that and bring it down. And when you're investigating, you're asking yourself, what are the thoughts that are contributing? So if you look at your handout, those are some of the questions that you can use to challenge the thoughts. And I don't have them, but if you guys look at it, does anybody want to read a couple of the questions on the challenge handout sheet?
Read it up. You gotta read it, tell me. Read it. So the first one is, am I falling into a thinking trap? Like catastrophizing or overestimating danger? Have I confused a thought with a fact? What is the evidence that this thought is true? What is the evidence that this is not true? What would I tell a friend if he or she has the same thoughts? What would a friend say about my thoughts? Am I 100% sure that blank will happen? How many times has blank happened before? Is blank so important that my future depends on it? What is the worst that could happen? If it did happen, what would I do to cope with or handle it? Is my judgment based on the way I feel instead of facts? And am I confusing possibility with certainty? It may be possible, but isn't likely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And so what you want to do when you're looking at these questions is answer them for yourself. And that's anytime you have any kind of question in your mind that's nagging, answer it just for yourself. You'll find that it doesn't have as much power and that you're the one that has the power. You're the one that's in the driver's seat when you answer it, and especially when you make it happen. So one of the books that I like is The Four Agreements, and Oprah is, I love Oprah. So I try to put her in a lot of my presentations, is The Four Agreements. And this guy, Miguel Ruiz, the four agreements are: be impeccable with your word, like be who you say you are. That'll cause you to have way less anxiety, because then you're not trying to manage all these personas for all of these different groups. Don't take things personal. Whatever is coming out of someone's mouth or whatever they're doing, it has more to do with them than you. In fact, it probably has nothing to do with you. Every person has their own story and every person has their own experience. So the things that we do, especially like when we do things to other people, it's really coming through the filters that we have of our own experiences. So just know that it's not about you, even if it feels like it is. It's not. Don't make assumptions. You know, ask questions, because assumptions just lead to judgment and error, because a lot of times the things that we assume are not true. And so, and then always do your best. And Oprah says, doing the best at this moment puts you in the best place for the next moment. And who would know that better than her? And so one of the tools that you can use is an acronym called READ. And READ, the R is for reflect, the E is for envision, the A is for apply, and the D is for determine. So like if you were to read Mr. Ruiz's book, you would, you know, like read a chapter or a page or whatever, and then take the time to reflect on what it is you're reading, like process it, because our mind likes answers, our mind likes to justify and understand things. And then envision, what would it be like to master my thoughts by investigating these questions? Or whatever it is you've learned, what would it be like for me to live this if my life looked like this, or if I did this thing that I just learned? And then apply. Take something that you've learned and apply it. Like if you want, like for instance, if you are prone to making assumptions, apply the thing of, you know, today I will not make assumptions, or at least I'll catch myself and stop myself. And then determine, like focus on the truth of the answers to the questions, and then determine what you're going to apply and how you're going to apply it. But make sure you actually apply it. The D is also for do. So actually, anything that you learn, if you don't apply what you learn, it's just information until you apply it. And so we'll switch to anger management, journaling and techniques for self-empowerment. Okay. So one of the things I teach my clients is the idea that anger is a secondary, it's almost always a secondary emotion. Sometimes it's a primary emotion, but usually the only time it's a primary emotion is if you feel angry about something that someone has done to someone with less power. You know, like when it's about you, it's usually secondary, and you usually feel one of these. And these emotions are, they're the more vulnerable ones. Like who wants to admit to being jealous, you know, or confused, or, you know, feeling rejected. But like the thing about the empowerment of this is if you can name your primary emotion, whoever it is you're talking to, whoever it is you're in conflict with, think of how powerful vulnerability is. Like if you, instead of reaching out in anger, you know, saying something like, well, what you just said to me made me feel really rejected right now, you know, or I feel deep rejection right now, or that brought up something for me. And then you can talk about that, because the person probably isn't rejecting you, and they can, engage in conversation with you to help you to feel better. All right, so anger is a normal response, but rage is not. And so anger happens on a continuum. Like a lot of times people will say they're angry when they actually feel something less than anger. And it starts with like mild annoyance, irritation, frustration, anger right in the middle, and it goes to rage and then murderous wrath. Most of us never get to murderous wrath. We might feel bad, but we don't like act out on it. And so the reason it's important to know that continuum and name where you are is because wherever you are, the next one is next. So if you are like cussing and screaming at, wrath is probably next. But if you're just at irritation, frustration is next. You can keep yourself from getting frustrated by addressing what's irritating to you. Like you don't even have to get to anger if you're way over here, and just deal with it or deal with yourself. Anger often happens when you feel offended, if you are trying to get people to do stuff that they don't want to do or that they're supposed to do, and they're not doing it, and they're not being cooperative. Anger promotes beliefs about yourself that are often not true. You feel like it's just really difficult to come across or really difficult to communicate. And usually some of these are just frustration and it's, irritation and stuff like that. So catch yourself on the anger continuum.
It's frustration, it's just a thought.
Yeah, it's frustration is a feeling, and it's how you're thinking about whatever is going on. Like frustration happens when you want something and you feel like you can't get it, or you feel powerless, or you want something from someone and they're not giving it to you. If you can recognize that they don't have to give it to me, that's up to me to get what I need, and then figure out another way to get it, then you can just leave that situation and, come up with another answer to whatever's going on. So you want to stop these are some of the techniques for stopping the what if spiral. Grounding exercises. I like this little quote: to ground is to pour your energies back into the earth and feel the warm calm of nature entering your body in exchange. My oldest daughter, she would love that. I mean, she's like my hippie child, she loves the earth and herbs and, essential oils and stuff like that. But all of that stuff is really, helpful for you. Some of the grounding exercises that you can teach yourself are mental grounding. Like mental grounding, if let's say you're all anxious and upset or even angry, if you apply mental grounding, it's just a matter of naming as many of something that you know, like how many dogs can I name? Go ahead.
That's the count to 10, right?
You can use the count to 10 method and naming different. Say that again.
Alphabet, like you said.
Yes.
Getting your brain on something else.
Yeah, because your brain really can only focus on, so whatever it is that's disturbing you or upsetting you, if you do mental grounding, then you'll start to calm yourself down. Another form of grounding is soothing grounding, where you think about your favorite moments. The thing about the brain is, if you remember something that was good and lovely and just wonderful, you're going to feel good and lovely and wonderful again. Like a vacation or a talk with a favorite niece or a good friend or something. Like your brain doesn't really know that you're not experiencing this, but your mind is thinking about it, and so your brain will release the same chemistry that it released when that was actually going on. And now the same is true when you think about angry stuff and what I should have said to her and what I should have done, and just reliving, perseverating on something that makes you feel bad. Do the same thing on stuff that makes you feel good. So the 2 is the breath body connection, like progressive muscle relaxation. You can do that on your own, and what that looks like is you could sit in the chair or lay on the floor on your bed, and you think about each muscle in your body, like starting with your feet. I don't think your feet has muscles, maybe the bottom, but you would clench them. Take a deep breath. Let's do it. So let's put our feet on the floor, and then inhale, take a deep breath. And then exhale it out. And you guys do it online too. And then squeeze your feet, like clench the muscles or cartilage or whatever is in our feet, clench it and take another deep breath. And as you're clenching it, when you release the breath, release the muscles. So think about your, and when I say think about, I mean, bring your attention to this body part. So think about your calves, take a deep breath and clench your calves. And you can do it with your eyes closed and then hold the breath and breathe out, releasing your calves. Bring your attention to your thighs, take a deep, and your bum, because you're sitting on chairs. Take a deep breath and clench your thighs and your bum. Hold it for a second and then release it and release the muscles. Bring your attention to your abdomen. Take a deep breath and clench your abdomen. I can never say that word. And then release it. Take a deep breath and bring your attention to your chest. And just squeeze the muscles there and release it. And then your arms, make fists and squeeze your arms and your fist, taking a deep breath, hold it and then release it. And then think about your neck and go like that, squeeze your neck. Take a deep breath and then release it. And then screw up your face, like, take a deep breath and then release it and relax your face. Oh, no, I mean, there's people now that are doing all these facial yoga exercises stuff, and I do those. And I just turned 53 this Tuesday. So that, you just do it. I mean, I think it's wonderful. So just do it. Yeah. So, but when you're doing that, you want to go slower. You want to make sure that you're really thinking about each body part and breathing in and letting it out. And that's the same thing, like breathing through each body part. You could do that walking around, like, and what that looks like is imagining air coming into your face and then air leaving your face, air coming into your chest and then leaving your chest. And you could do that standing in line at the grocery store or standing up fighting with someone. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Does it matter from the top down?
Oh, you can do it from the top down. Some people do this where because you should do it at least twice. So some people do it from the bottom up and then from the top down as well.
Because I was told by starting at the top and releasing, realizing or feeling that it's leaving you.
Oh, yeah, that's very smart. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's however it is you're thinking about it and envisioning it. So like when you're breathing out, you can envision it leaving your feet or, coming out of your heart. And yeah, so it's how you're thinking about it and what you're envisioning. So now we'll look at a couple of before preventative measures and reactive measures when you are dealing with anger. And preventative is just the idea of what can I do before I get to anger? And then reactive is I'm already angry. So what do I do? So one of the preventative measures is think before you speak. We are the only creatures that can do this. Like we can decide, how we're going to think about something and, what thoughts we're going to allow into our mind and plan how we're going to respond. So because we have that, we should use that. But when you're angry, it's hard to use that because your brain is already hijacked and you have all these chemicals coursing through you. So in order to think first, you need flexibility. And these are 4 ways to be more flexible. Learn how to regulate your emotions. And that takes identifying your emotions and using some of these techniques like breathing and changing your thought processes so that you can learn how to respond in a different way to things that trigger you. Our brain likes to, there's a part of our brain in the limbic system called the amygdala, and its job is to scan for safety all day long, like 24/7, even when you're sleeping. Like if you've ever awakened in the middle of the night and your kid is just standing over you staring at you, the reason you wake up like that is because it's your amygdala saying, someone's standing over you, it's just tripping. So the thing about the amygdala is if you live through your amygdala, you're always looking for something to be afraid of or something danger when there's no danger. So learning to regulate your emotion tells you don't want to turn off your amygdala because you want it when you need it, but you don't want to be living through your amygdala every day. Giving yourself some distraction and timeouts removes yourself from the situation, or distracting yourself with taking care of something that needs to be taken care of. Number 3 is asking yourself, how important is this anyway? And will this matter, in 5 days or 5 years? Will it even matter later today or tomorrow? Say that again?
You won't even remember what you.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have you had an argument with someone or your spouse, and then you're discussing it later and you go, what were we even fighting about? Because it doesn't, yeah, so like, and whatever's going on, find a different perspective. Like, how else can I see this? And using those questions can help you with that, because whatever is happening, there's usually more than one way to look at it. And so, I always tell people, there is nothing on the outside of you that can make you feel or do anything, but it's what you're thinking of what's going on the outside of you. So the way this happens is something will happen, and then there's you, the observer, and then you interpret it a certain way, like you're giving a meaning to it, and that's going to cause, because most people think it's this. Most people think an event happens and then they feel, but there's you in the mix, and whatever it is you're thinking about it, it doesn't go from event to feeling. It feels like it because you're more aware of your feelings than you are of your thoughts. Like, you're first aware of your feelings because it's a feeling. And so the way you stop yourself is you ask yourself, what meaning am I giving to this? And the reason it's important is because out of your feeling and the intensity of your feeling, that's when you're going to decide your behavior, like how you're going to respond.
So let's say you're already feeling angry.
No,
But how do you stop
this is the preventative measures.
Oh,
Like, this is before you get to anger, you note how you're feeling, and then you start asking yourself some of those questions. Like, what does this mean for me? Like, what meaning am I giving to this? Am I catastrophizing? Like, catastrophizing is making something really big, or making something bigger than what it actually is. And so when you're investigating, it's you that you're investigating. You're asking yourself, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking? Because you're not feeling whatever you're feeling because of the situation, because somebody else could come along and see or experience that same situation and feel something different. And so the variable in there is what you're thinking about it. So you want to find out what you're thinking, and then give yourself another perspective, another true perspective. It's not about positive thinking, because, positive psychology, works, but it can be really short term, because so the thing is, you want to find out what is the truth, because we believe the truth. Like, we don't always believe, the positive things that we say, but you can believe whatever is true. So find out what that is in this situation, and then it'll change how you would behave instead of going into anger. Does that make sense?
So if you're already angry.
Oh, then we're gonna get to those. Okay, so these are, so now we're gonna do express anger. So this is still a preventive measure. Expressing anger is a way to prevent anger. And I'll show you how. Okay. So the problem of not expressing your anger is it leads to pathological anger. And like I said in an earlier slide, like, anger is a normal response. But when it becomes pathological, then you're angry all the time and you're blowing things out of proportion. And so it leads to like passive aggressive behaviors. And so there's like 4 different kinds of ways to communicate. You can be assertive, which is the healthy way. You could be passive aggressive, which is you're saying one thing but meaning another, or you're expecting people to read your mind. You can be aggressive, which is usually yelling and screaming, or pushing and shoving. And then, or you can be passive, which is like the martyrdom. You're always right, I'm always wrong, and losing and stuff. None of that stuff is healthy. The only healthy one is assertiveness, and it helps you to not become cynical or hostile or critical, because all of these behaviors, when you don't express your anger, because like sometimes people don't express anger because they're trying to preserve a relationship. That never works. It's going to end up, failing at some point, because you've let all this anger bottle up. So we're still on preventative, don't worry. So there are three approaches. You can actually express it, which is the most healthy. You can suppress it, and I'll explain what that is. I don't mean like pushing it under the rug, it's just saving it for later. And then calming yourself, giving yourself some time and being aware of what's going on for you internally. So expression is just talking to people without hurting others. And when you express what's happening for you and what's going on for you, you show a respect for yourself and others. Suppression is not from the idea of not saying anything or pushing it under the rug. It's more like you giving yourself time to think first, and then you can convert the anger into something more useful. And then I have a warning here, not letting it out at all can turn into depression, which means you can turn on yourself, and that becomes more anger and stuff like high blood pressure. And so then the last form is to relax. Like if you feel yourself and there's anger coming on, do something that's going to put you in a more relaxed state, because it'll allow the heat of whatever is going on to subside before you get into anger. So now we're going to go into we're already angry. So one of the reactive measures, you ready for this? One of the reactive measures is that's kind of unusual is to try to develop empathy. Like put yourself in the shoes of the other person and try to see it from their perspective, because that takes your mind off you. Like a lot of times when we're angry, we're really struggling with what's going on in ourselves. And so like developing some other orientedness, and it helps you to see things from another perspective. Now, the thing about empathy is it's not a being walked over, because you could see someone's perspective without losing your own. And so that's when you know that it's more empathy than being like a doormat, because being a doormat is just going to make you be angry, because when people can take advantage of you, a lot of times they will, and then you'll get tired of that, and then you become angry. So the reason empathy matters is because it connects us to one another. It decreases defensive energy. So a lot of times, like sometimes people are, just offensive. Like they say things that are offensive, they do things that are offensive. But if you allow yourself to be offended, but because of what you're thinking about, it's not because of what they're doing, it's because of what you're thinking about, then you create all this defensive energy, and you're probably going to respond in that way. Empathy increases collaborative energy, because then you can talk about it, you can work together to get to the other side of it. And a lack of empathy does all these things: decrease your trust, it makes you more isolated, and it strains your relationship. So as a reactive measure, let's say you're already angry, start trying to think about like, well, how can I see this from that person's perspective? And a lot of times when you do that, you can see that they have another perspective that's different from yours. You may not agree with it, but you can at least allow for, that's that person's perspective, and it's coming from whatever experiences they have. And we can't deny people their experiences are there. So when you're cultivating empathy, make sure you do it with people who are safe, like people that are, the people that are not safe with you because of how you feel when you leave their presence. And so when you're practicing it, start off with, people that are safe. And then a new view of boundaries that I would like you guys to adopt is, like, most people think of boundaries as how much they're going to put up with or how much they're going to let in and keep out. And that's a small part of boundaries, but the bigger part of boundaries has more to do with what are you responsible for? Like all of your thoughts, words, feelings, behaviors, and resources of time, energy, and money belong to you. And all of my thoughts, words, feelings, and behaviors and resources of time and energy belong to me. Like when you're married or you're in a partnership, you might share some resources, but at the end of the day, what you think are your thoughts, and anybody you're communicating with, what they think, it's their thoughts. I once read this book called Boundaries by Doctors Cloud and Townsend, and one of my favorite lines in the book is, "What you think of me is none of my business." And if you adopt that, then people could be doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and it just goes over. You're not really, it's not really impacting you, and so you're not going to act in a defensive way. Another line that I like in that book is, "Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part." Because it's so true, And, that's really, if you ever work with people that are married, like helping them to see that, it helps them to each take responsibility for their own boundaries. Empathy promotes active and reflective listening, and active listening means that you're actively listening to the words that's coming out of the person's mouth. Like you don't land on something and then start making up your excuse or your justification. You stay with what they're saying. And then reflective listening, if you've been actively listening, then you can reflect back what they're saying. And you should do that to make sure you're on the same page, because communication hasn't happened until the message sent is the one that's received. And what we do is someone will give us a message, but because we've landed, 3 paragraphs behind or in the beginning, the message, we will reply with something that isn't even what they were talking about. And then the person that brought the communication will often say, what? That's not what I said, or that's not what I meant. And then they start arguing about what wasn't said and what wasn't meant instead of what the actual communication was. So active and reflective listening helps you to avoid that. And then empathy also helps you to express what you think and what you feel, and it helps the other person as well. And so then the last after measure, reactive measure, is to forgive. So, and I smile because I'm looking at you and you're like, but like if you like, a lot of times people think of forgiveness as a religious thing. And it's one of the things that, people that have a faith system do because that's what, God requires. But when you choose not to forgive, the only thing that you do is you create a grievance story. And it's a 3-step process where you internalize the offense, and then you make the person who offended you responsible for your feelings. And up until now, we've talked about we are responsible for how we respond to things. And then you repeat the story to yourself and to others over and over. So when we internalize it, we're convincing ourselves that the bad things that happen, and it's a lot of times it's bad things that happen to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. It only happens to us, or it happens to us in the worst way. And we take it personally when people are just acting out of their own hurt and pain. So one of the things you want to ask yourself, or some of the things are like, am I taking this too personally? And asking yourself what's coming up for me. Was the hurt intentional? Think about that. Like it probably wasn't. And even if it was, you can have a conversation about that. Are there personal or impersonal aspects of what happened? Like what, how am I looking at this? And then what about this is not even a personal thing anyway? If you feel like the offense was intentional, communicate that you feel that way with the person and then let it go. And if it's not intentional, try to figure out how you can reach an understanding by communicating back and forth. When you blame the person for how you're feeling, you just give away your own power, because then you're saying that your feelings are not your own and your feelings are your own. So some of the things that you can ask yourself is, did I learn anything from this? Did this make me stronger, more compassionate? Did somebody else gain something from this? Most people, have you ever heard that the saying, hurt people hurt people? Well, hurt people help people too. There's a lot of people in the helping professions that, have their own hurts, and they've decided to, instead of turning it on the world, like figuring out how to help other people who have been hurt as well. And then the problems of the grievance story is it's only from your perspective, and there's always more than one. And the story is not just influenced by what happened, but it's influenced by your past and your memories and your own personal experience. And even if it's true, or elements of it is true, depending on how you tell it, you're just hurting yourself, and you can hurt others as well based on how you're telling it. And then the thing about telling it over and over, it changes over time. Like the longer you're telling it, the more negative energy you're creating, and the more cortisol and all of the stress hormones, adrenaline, and every time you create this chemistry in your body that just makes you not feel good. So we're going to look at whether or not you should forgive and dispelling the myths associated with it. So forgiveness is not forgetting. even though you will hear people say forgive and forget, you'll probably remember it, but when you do remember it, you won't have a negative charge around your heart anymore. It won't affect you in a physiological or emotional way because you let it go. It's not saying that what the person did is okay, like it doesn't sanction the offense. You don't have to tell a person that you forgive them. In fact, there are some cases where you probably shouldn't do that, like just walking up to someone that offended you and say, I forgive you. That's probably just going to cause more, stress and drama. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you automatically trust the person. In fact, good boundaries would require that trust be redeveloped. It doesn't even mean that you continue the relationship. You can decide to forgive someone and let go of the grievance and decide they're not safe to have a relationship with. Or if it's a family member that you can't really not see, one of the things that you can do is decide under which conditions you will see them, like in large family gatherings at holidays. So one rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb is large crowds and small doses. So even at that holiday function, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and then move on. You don't have to continue on if you don't feel safe. And forgiveness requires time. Like we can decide to forgive someone and let it go, and then a couple of years later, something else will come up and remind us. And it's just a continuous releasing until you do get to the point where it doesn't create that negative charge around your heart. So there are 5 steps in asking for forgiveness. Most people, when they are sorry about something, they'll lead with I'm sorry. And who cares if you're sorry? I'm just left with whatever it is you did to me. So it doesn't really matter to me that you're sorry, because most people are sorry because either they got caught or now they have to deal with this conflict because of what they're doing. So I teach this to husbands and wives all the time, and other people. But the first thing you want to do is you want to state what it is you have done. And the second thing is you want to state how you think it made the person feel. And the reason you want to do that is if you get it right, like if they actually did feel that way, then that's empathy. They see that you see it from their perspective, you're standing in their shoes, and it helps them to feel heard. And then the third step is you say, I'm sorry, because what you're really sorry for is the impact that it had on that person. You're really sorry for number 2, like how they felt and how it affected them. And then you ask for forgiveness. Will you forgive me? That's a very powerful statement. And let them say whatever they're gonna say. Like some people will say, yeah, or sure, or I already forgave you. But some people will say, I don't know. I don't know if I can ever forgive them. Or no, I can't forgive them. But whatever they say, it's not about them. It's about what you have done. So you make amends. Ask, how can I make up for it? And then do it if they have a way, and let them have their journey, whether or not you're forgiving. They're going to forgive you. And so there are 5 steps to giving forgiveness. You want to acknowledge the hurt, because it's not about Pollyanna thinking, and never say that's okay, unless it really is okay. But if it's not okay, don't say that's okay. Let the person clear themselves, and you clear yourself by acknowledging the hurt, because if you don't, you're just going to take it with you. And whatever the hurt was, it's going to continue to hurt you. You want to identify your emotions. And chapter 11 or 13, it is like, that's a bankruptcy. Like if you've ever had a bankruptcy, you go to the judge and you have Sears and Citibank and, this, that, and the other on there that you owe these thousands of dollars to. And then the judge says, well, you don't have to pay that. So you're just letting the person off the hook, and because they're probably not going to give you what you want anyway. So just like chapter 11 it. And then you set boundaries with the person and then decide to release it. Okay. So that's a quick, these are preventative measures and these are reactive measures, but again, you can get the presentation. Now, there's an article in your packet, and you can read that later, but it's one of the most powerful articles I've ever come across, and it's from the Big Blue Book, the Alcoholics Anonymous, and it talks about what acceptance is and what acceptance isn't, and it's very empowering. So I encourage you to read it when you have a chance. Any questions?
I thought I was going to add something to the forgiveness portion. So we're still, it's nothing else. So I thought we were handing, oh, I can't have questions, who wants a question?
I just had a comment. So on the forgiveness portion, you know, Gary Chapman, who wrote the 5 languages, love languages, he also has the 5 languages of forgiveness.
Oh, check that out.
Yeah, so on your slide that had the forgiveness part, there were some extra ones that he had that actually depend on the person and how they receive forgiveness or how they receive your apology, more apology. And so that was very impactful for me because when I was watching it, it was on it was on TV. Yeah, I was watching it, and I had young children at the time, and so I taught them 4 out of the 5 ways to ask for forgiveness or to make an apology, and I taught them it as a full apology because that way I figured when they grow up and they have relationships and something should happen, they'll hit one of those languages so that the other person would accept it.
Yeah,
It's really powerful, actually.
yeah, I'll check it out. What is it called?
I think it's the same author, Gary Chapman, and I think it's called the 5 languages of forgiveness. Forgiveness, I believe. Well, love is the other, yes, love is one,
Yeah,
which is more of them.
yeah. Thank you. Beth? Mega Beth?
One of the things, it's not really a question that, well, it is part of the question, or it is part of, I had a work relationship that was very volatile, and it was just never going to change. This person was who they are, they talked to you the way they did, and there's just no way to change this person. And I mentally, during the conversation where I just, in my mind, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I was saying it out loud, kind of like an Ally McBeal moment, you know, I am not giving you permission.
Yeah.
Actually, what was it? I said, you do not have permission to make me feel this way.
Yeah.
I'm not allowing you that power.
Yeah.
And the minute I said that, I had my Ally McBeal moment. I kind of had this calmness, and then he could say and do whatever he wanted, and I just stared at him and was like, I'm a brick wall and it's all bouncing right off of me.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was something I did.
That's a powerful form of self-care because a lot of times when you're in situations like that, an earlier version of yourself will take over, like the little girl version who feels like threatened because there was a reason to be threatened once upon a time, but now you're a grown woman. And whether this is your boss or not, you are your own person and you do have a voice and you do have, you know, power. And so like saying something like that to yourself, it calms that little girl down where she doesn't have to take over the scene and just kind of fold up and have you fold it up, you know? Yeah.
Does living through a traumatic experience cause you to live through your amygdala? So that,
Oh, yeah.
so what do you do about that? Like, how do we retrain that so you're not,
Yeah.
you know, sleeping with, you know, your senses open, you know? Or,
Yeah. A lot of going for trauma, I think if you've been through a traumatic event, go and get therapy. I mean, because trauma is not something that you can process by yourself. Maybe there are some people that can do that, but get some kind of counseling, some kind of therapy to get to the other side of that. But the thing about therapy is like find a trauma-informed therapist because he or she will give you things to do. Because again, like unless you apply what it is you're learning, it's just information, it's just knowledge. And so you have to apply it. And then learning self-care and self-soothing, emotion regulation things, because then you're retraining your amygdala not to be in a state of hyperarousal all the time because of that trauma. But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. But get some help too.
Okay, well, go ahead. I was gonna say that this is a good time to write down your questions because she's coming back later and we do have another speaker with a very important message to present to us, so. Okay.
One more really quickly. What do you do when you, or what do you recommend when you sit down to dinner and your kids start picking on each other? And is there a, you know, how do you diffuse that and in a short sound bite that's effective? Is there a
Redirect them. Like one good family ritual is, we call it in our house high point low point. Other families that I know call it roses and thorns, and it's where you talk about, this was my high point of the day, and this is why. This was my low point of the day, and this is why. And it teaches kids to have empathy for each other. And if you're like being empathetic with someone, you're probably not going to be fighting with them at the same time. So like some kind of redirection or distraction. So you're welcome.
Okay, so that was a great presentation. I really did clear. I will be sending out, and I think everybody on Zoom received it this morning. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I will be sending out, you know, the document to you because I'll have your email by your signing in. Okay, and so let's take 10 minutes now. Let's take a quick break. We do have water. I'm sorry, we're still trying to get it. So there-
Thank you very much. It's great to see you all, such friendly faces. Many of you I've known for a long time. I really appreciate you having me here and appreciate the subject as we're going into the holidays to sort of remind us kind of how to manage it and what to expect. Probably you know a lot of this already, but it'll just be kind of like, remember, we're going, here we go, you know, into the holidays. And I appreciate this club, right? So much. I've told Lois I want to get my daughter in this, but you know, you guys are doing such great things, and it's so great that you're, you know, such an important part of our community. So Phyllis asked me to talk a little bit about holiday blues and stress, you know, and so we'll just talk about what to expect. A lot of this is a little bit is what Tracy was talking about, right? I've been doing kind of counseling for many decades, I hate to say, but I still learn stuff. I was watching Tracy and going, oh, yeah, I'm going to use that. So she was really great. So I'm going to use some of her stuff as I go along. So I'm big on mindfulness. You probably heard this, you know. We used to call it meditation, and we used to be kind of a religious thing, kind of peace for those of you who grew up in the 60s, you know. But now we know mindfulness is just something a little bit what Tracy was talking about. You know, it's really noticing and acknowledging your feelings and emotions. So she was talking.
I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know about.
Yeah.
Not loud enough.
Can you put it higher here?
Higher to
Is that possible?
mouth. How's that? Is that better? A little better?
Well, it's a little better.
Can I go higher? Like, put it in my mouth. Is that better? I'll try to. I was a recreation director, so I can talk very loud. But now I'm a psychotherapist and I talk very. It just sort of depends. So I'll try to talk louder and project.
Thank you.
So what we talk about is acknowledging feelings, and that's our feelings are coming from the amygdala, right? Our threat response and that sort of thing. So being able to observe your feelings is really important. So mindfulness is about observing your feelings, and sometimes we measure them on a scale of 1 to 10. How angry am I? How anxious am I? And that sets off this part of your brain that observes your feelings. So observing your own reactions is really kind of one of the most important things. We're going to talk about grief and loss and trauma. Somebody asked about trauma. So during the Christmas season, and I say Christmas, but I get caught on that. During the holiday season, a lot of us are dealing with grief and loss and trauma. So this trauma happens a lot during the holidays, but even if it didn't happen during the holidays, the trauma that you may have experienced that year is really amplified during the holidays. And the dread that you may feel, that people may feel as holidays come. So I have lots of students I talk to, clients I talk to, as they enter the holidays, this dread starts coming over as early as Halloween, because they know this is a really tough time for them for all the kinds of reasons that I'll be talking about. And stress is it's going to be really stressful. And just normal holiday stuff is stressful. I have to get this done. I have to do this done. I have to have a tree. I have to do my cards. I have to do, you know the list of holiday stuff. So start with just this. Coping strategies, self-care. It's really important for you to take care of yourself during the holidays. It's not all about, I gotta fix the turkey, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, you do have to take care of yourself. If you do self-care, you will have a more enjoyable holiday season. Believe me. So it's that deep breathing. So Tracy gave you a really good exercise in deep breathing. It's one of the things we teach everybody, especially when there's stress and when there's anxiety. So breathe in through your nose, slowly breathe out like a straw through your mouth. Big, start with a big exhale. Or to get a big exhale, you have to get a good inhale. To the point where you actually feel the lungs fill and then blow out slowly. Like that. It's really important to be able to do that anytime. And I suggest people practice that before there's stress so that when the stress comes, they can launch right into that feeling and keep in control. Take breaks. I do that all the time. With during a holiday, everybody's around, it's all crazy, and all of a sudden you just sort of get this thing, I gotta go to the restroom, or I gotta take a quick break. Just take a little break. You don't have to say, I'm taking the time out because I'm stressed. It's no, just take a little break, you can disappear and then come back. Avoid overcommitting. This is all you all know. Right?
We're not doing that.
And I tell you, I'm not good at that either. That's part of my problem. I work probably 11, 15 hours almost every day. And it's because I have a hard time. And I'm on Saturdays. Look at here. My wife goes, what are you doing on Saturday? Well, no, this is really important. But it's all important, right? So you have to be able to avoid overcommitting and not feel guilty. Try to avoid the guilt of, so maybe you get somebody else to help. So I think when Phyllis called, I said, I could do that, anger management, but I know somebody that can also do it even better than me, Tracy.
Yeah.
So right, so you don't have to feel bad about somebody else doing exactly what you could do. They need to do it better. And so overcommitting is one of the ways to really mess up your holidays because you just feel fragile. You feel great at the end. Yeah, I got everything done, but you really weren't present as you might have been. And so pick one or two key activities. What's the main thing? What's here we go. We're going into we've already been to Halloween, right? Now we're going into Thanksgiving and then off we go. You have a family, you know what's most important, but talk to your family about, okay, what are the key things? What are the things that we do that's we're really going to do? Maybe it's we always go to the Christmas tree lot and pick out the Christmas tree. Maybe we always do like these certain candles at this certain time. Certain key things you want to do instead of I got to go along. Okay, just a little reminder. This is this all goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Avoid overindulgence. So holidays means wine and margaritas and whatever it is for you. So it's like you have a tendency, okay, we're going to drink when we're drinking, or we're going to eat, and we're going to spend, and that's overindulging. It doesn't mean you don't drink, you don't have wine or whatever your family traditions are. It doesn't mean you don't eat grandma's cake or your turkey. It's just realize when you're overindulging. Okay, we're going to eat every day, a big meal. So we're going to drink every day, starting the night before Thanksgiving. Is that what it's going to be? Or like, well, maybe one day, or just or maybe 2 drinks instead of 5. And also when you get together with family and friends, it's like you're all drinking, and sometimes there's so much stress. We'll talk about this a little later. You have to drink in order to get along with it. So gotta be careful with that too. But doing something fun, just small excursions, even if it's like a little hike up Towsley or hike up Placerita, or a trip to, I would say, I don't know, a lot of people like Disneyland this time of year. I've tried it. It's beautiful, but it's crazy, So I'm not sure that really is the best thing. But small excursions to the beach, to Ventura, maybe a hike, just little small excursions with your family or even by yourself. But by doing something fun, so it's not all stress, right? We're trying to avoid overstressing. So I put this in just because I just thought about it this week. You know, what about the hype? Because there's so many people that are cynical about the hype. Oh, you know, for me, I love this Christmas. I love, this is just me. I love all the noise and all the stuff. For some, it can like, oh, there's that sign again. There's that sign again. I don't want to do this anymore. Oh, they got their Christmas trees up in Halloween. What's wrong? You know, so. But you just want to sort of acknowledge its effect on your mood. Maybe it makes you feel good, but it also makes you feel sad, or it makes you feel stressed, or whatever like that. So just acknowledge your mood's effect. You know, I used to feel like it's really important to go to the Christmas tree lot and hear the music, because that jacked me into the holidays. You know, so you can sort of know what will jack you into the holidays if that's what you want to do. But if that's not, it's still acknowledging your mood and your family's mood. And I put this, understand, you don't have to meet unrealistic expectations of yourself, your family. You don't have to, so I'm giving you permission, if that matters. You don't have to do everything everybody wants you to do. You don't have to have the best light show, although I do.
You don't have to.
Thank you. You know, I had this competition with a guy across the street, you know. First I did, I know, you can tell he's and finally he's just like beating me. Okay, you're done, John, you win. So I just kind of keep it. But his thing is great. But just sort of understand, you know, you don't have to meet unrealistic expectations. You don't have to, and give yourself permission. And then notice when you're being cynical, people are trying to make a living. If you've ever run a business, if you've ever been in retail, if you've ever done, you know, my father he imported wine from Europe. And this was his year. This was his time of year, man. This was it. This is where the bucks were made, you know. So he wasn't as available as, you know, he might have been the rest of the year. So just acknowledge when people have their stuff up and they're trying to sell stuff and they're playing the music in the store, they're trying to make money. This is their season to make money. Maybe just appreciate that, you know. So here's some other coping strategies. Tracy covered a lot of these, but you know, listen to music or don't. For me, getting in the mood is listening. It used to be listening to the you know, Ben Crosby and stuff, but now I'm more into traditional Irish kinds of music. So Pandora, you put, you know, Celtic music from Ireland, all day long. But no, she actually likes it too. But you know, listen to music that'll help you with your mood. Or if the music makes you sad, then don't. You know, some people, like we'll talk about, this is the time of grieving. This is time of real stress. And when you hear music, you just don't want to go there. So. But it's one thing you can do in the breathing exercises that Tracy and I just taught you, and take time out. This is kind of, I'll put it in here a couple of times. Take time out. You know, sometimes I'll tell students, you got to take a time out. It reminds them that their teacher told them to take a time out when they're misbehaving in class. Well, no, the break. Take a break. Oh yeah, I'm out in trouble. Just. The reason why teachers do that is because they really expect you to take a time out and relax and get yourself gathered again. Because if you're firing, to use Tracy's language, if your amygdala is firing the whole time, you know, you aren't really present. You're just like, you know, so. But take time for yourself, or spend time with friends or family who get you. You know, if you think about growing up, who got you? Who was the person that got you? Was your mother? Was it your aunt? For me, it's my Aunt Polly. She was my godmother. She got me. It didn't matter what I did, what kind of trouble I got in. She got me. She knew. She accepted me no matter what I did. My mom did too, as long as I behaved. But you know what I mean? Spend time with friends. Hopefully, there's a friend out there that gets you, and you get them. And spend time with them, because that's who really counts, in my opinion, in the holiday season. Try to allow time for humor, you know, magic, mystery, spirituality, relaxation. Those are all kind of, put those all in there because I only have half hour. But you can talk about every one of those, allow time for the mystery of the seasons, no matter what your spirituality is, whether you're a Druid or whether you're a Christian or whether Jewish or African American, Ramadan and Kwanzaa and all, just allow time for the spirituality, the magic of the season to sort of take you for a little bit, the mystery of life and everything else, but a lot of time for humor also, and time for relaxation. Just give yourself permission to relax during the holidays. Some people say, I can't relax in the holidays. That's not going to help you. You're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to be able to manage all the stress that you're doing. Exercise, ride your bike, walk, run, hike, swim, all that sort of stuff. One of the things we like to do is the day after Christmas, we go to the beach. So the beach in California, the day after Christmas is almost always perfect. Almost always. Once in a while, it's not. Almost always perfect. You take a bike ride on the boardwalk in Santa Monica, you'll be really glad you did. Why don't I do this all the time? For those of you a little older, it's an e-ticket ride, So it's like one of the great things to do. But just go to Ventura and walk around. Just spend a few minutes riding your bike or walking or running or hiking. There's some really good hikes here. We just had it rain, so most of the waterfalls are filled. Whitney Canyon, Foster Canyon. There's waterfalls all over the place. Just and eat and sleep well. I like that Tracy really emphasized sleep because that's something we don't really emphasize. So good sleep is really important for your health, and eat at least moderately. Don't eat too much, and you got to eat some of the sweets and stuff if you want. But just be careful and do what you love to do. I'm going to play a song. It's one of the things I love to do is play music. But whether it's baking or playing or writing music or painting or decorating or watching movies, take some time to do what you love to do. So that doesn't come January 3rd, you're back to whatever grind you're in and you go, geez, I didn't enjoy that at all. It's crazy. It's over. It might be some relief that it's over. For some people, there's a relief. At the same time, if you take some time during the holidays to do something that you really and just remember, this is kind of a remembering thing, that time of the year can be stressful, right? Children are paying attention to your behavior, even if you're not paying attention to that. So this is something that we always worry about. A lot of drinking and a lot of stuff. Kids are watching you, and that means your grandkids or your kids or whatever, your kids' friends, they're watching you. You may not be watching that. For adolescents, this is the time to go take a little dip. But for other kids, it's like, hey, you're really paying attention to me, And so they're watching you, and you have to keep an eye on them. And the more you drink, the less concentration you have, attention you have for the kids, whether that's an adolescent or kids, and remember that even if you're going through stuff, they may be going through stuff too. Not everyone enjoys the holidays and is happy for a variety of reasons, so be kind and understanding, and that's what might be helpful. So if you experience trauma or loss and you're coming into the holidays, let people know what you need, because you may need to take days off. You may need to take time off. You need something that you have to be able to articulate. So to start off with, articulate it to yourself. What do I need for this holiday if you've gone through a loss? Or it's been a trauma. But also ask what people might need from you, Don't assume they want to talk about the loss. Don't assume they don't want to talk about it. Don't assume you're just going to, let's just go be happy and forget about it. Maybe that's what they want. But be aware that what works for you may not work for them. If you both experience the same loss, but if somebody's experienced a loss and they're scheming into the holidays, you know, if you really want to get that, just ask, what do you need? You know, what do you need? Right? And longing for the unachievable past can do things. So you can try to achieve the past, and I do. Oh, we always had a live tree, so I don't know. But for some people, trying to achieve that past is just not possible, or is painful trying to do it. So just be aware, we can have new traditions, we'll talk about that in a minute, but just longing for that past can be painful. So just noticing that feeling. Because we all grew up, right? A lot of us grew up in holiday seasons, and when we were a kid, it was this way. Now we're an adult, that's this way. And it's like, I wish it was that way. So that pain is just like, it can hurt. So a little bit about family. So I'm just going to read this today. A history of family dysfunction where alcohol and drug abuse around the holidays, an expectation for everyone to get together and have a good time, and leaders dreading holidays, right? So if you have a family, or somebody that has a family where it's always about drinking, it was always about fighting, it was always about dysfunction and screaming and everybody getting, mad and all that kind of stuff. And maybe there's some loss, and if those of you know somebody that has a serious alcohol problem, the holidays are often really rocky, because they may be very angry, they may be very upset, they may be very whatever, so all these emotions come up, and you don't want to, you just dread it. You have to do it. We have to all get together, and so this dread is starting to come up. I have several students I'm talking right now about the dread of the holidays. Somebody was sexually assaulted right after Christmas. Somebody's brother died, right after Christmas or right during the holidays. Everybody's birthday, my mother's birthday is on Christmas, and it's always this and that. And so going into the holidays is just like dreadful, so just knowing, okay, being aware that, okay, this is dread, and not everybody is happy, like for me, I've had some losses, this year and in the past, and so there's always a little sting coming into the holidays, but there's always this so I'm sort of kind of dreading, and we always do, but all of a sudden, but I'm also like, oh, holidays, here we go, but a lot of people, it's not holidays, here we go. It's holidays, oh dang, I don't want to, here we go again, So don't assume that your anticipation of the holidays is the same as everyone else's. And then somebody else might be really happy and you're not. And so be aware that that's them and that's not you. You don't have to, you don't have to join that, this year. So you want to be able to set limits and boundaries. You go into the holidays in a family like this. Yeah, I know Uncle Joe wants us over his house, but I don't think I'm going to go over this stupid, or somebody wants to really talk with you, and there's all this kind of stuff from the past. So just setting limits and boundaries. You don't have to be best friends with everybody in the world. Just learning how to set limits and say no. I'm not going to do that this year. Yes, I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to do this. Being able to set limits and boundaries. And us therapists can talk about boundaries all day long, so you can probably get an idea. So stay with normal routines if need be. So if you have this really tough holiday season, one of the suggestions is you don't want to do the holidays, you don't want to do Thanksgiving, you don't want to do, just stay with your normal routine. Just almost, gut it out in a way, You don't have to celebrate. You don't have to do everything everybody else does. It's just stay with some routine as best you can. And just know holidays will soon be over. And for some people, that's the best advice. For some people, what do you mean? I got to, you can get through it this year. Stay true to yourself and try to avoid further conflict. So, kind of like Tracy was saying, who are you? You're somebody. Just because everybody's like that doesn't mean you're not good enough, doesn't mean something, doesn't have to affect you, so that you can observe the effect of other people, and family on you, but you don't have to react or feel, you don't have to take that all in and judge yourself. And, for me, it's try to avoid further conflict. I'm kind of a conflict, averse person to start with. I'm not the kind of person, and that's to my detriment sometimes, but, it's kind of avoid conflict, especially if you're really mad at somebody, you haven't dealt with the forgiveness and everything Tracy was talking about, and you start drinking, pretty soon, it feels really good to just lay it on, and it's not really going to be helpful in a while. So this same thing, avoid drinking around family with a history of drinking. So like, oh, we always drink, and pretty soon there's always somebody that goes off, and everybody goes off. Like, well, okay, that's your cue to not drink in that situation, because then you will be your reactions and the things you say and do will have more precision, right? You'll have more precision. You'll say, okay, I'm not drinking, even though it'll be fun, whatever. I'm going to choose what I say and what I do, and I might drink around people that get me. Not here, even though it's Christmas Day, maybe one glass of wine or whatever it's like, but if you drink when everybody else is drinking, and that's the problem with the family, then it's very difficult to not feel bad and not get into conflict.
Put on the coffee.
Yeah.
Get out the cookies.
Right. So try forgiveness. Tracy did a really good job of talking about forgiveness, So try it. It doesn't mean you have to forget it, but forgiveness is a good thing if you can. Or at least avoid ruminating, on what you're resentful about. Resentment is one of those things that you really need when you're a kid to keep from owning what your father said about you. For example, you're lousy, you're stupid, you're no good, and so if you get resentment, it's an imperfect offense, but it helps for you to not take it all in. You take some of it in and but it keeps you, I know my dad is, so if you keep that resentment, but when you're older, resentment is not very useful. It just sort of sticks with you and eats at you, and it's just one of those things. You ruminate on your resentments, you're going to be unhappy. So one of the ways is sort of notice when you're resentful. Is, do I really need to be resentful? Or can I just kind of move on in my own way? So I want to talk about grief, loss, and trauma. Originally, I was going to talk about just grief and loss, but we've gone through a lot of trauma just to start with in Santa Cruz, right? Between the sagas and the borderline and the COVID and civil unrest and Asian Americans being hassled and, you name it, fires. Pardon me?
It was a tough time.
Yeah,
2 years.
it's been really tough, and so there's been a lot of trauma. But you may have a personal trauma where you lost somebody in COVID, or you lost somebody in a car wreck, or you lost somebody in other ways that, Linda and I are talking about, just could be, really serious tragedies, and when you're steaming into the holidays and you've had a trauma or a tragedy or a loss, it's really hard. It's really hard. And that's just the way it is. And that's why Tracy was saying, counseling is really helpful. It speeds up the process of recovery. So I endorse that. If you had a really traumatic thing happen to you. Doesn't mean you have to. If you have somebody else that gets you or listens to you, but can speed up. But if you have the first Christmas without a family member, flat out, it's hard. It's just hard. You can't make you feel any better when that happens. But just know that that's something. But it's the first Christmas, and that's the song I'm going to play. It's the first Christmas without you. I wrote a song. Maybe I'll do that at the end. So the subsequent Christmases can also be fun, right? later on, just because like I'm a student I'm meeting with now, her brother died right during this season, you know. Unexpectedly, he was like 18, what the heck, you know, had a heart attack. 18-year-olds don't have heart attacks. So this is 6 years later. It's still tough. So it doesn't mean that the first Christmas is, I'm thinking this first Christmas is probably always the hardest, you know, and it gets better, but it doesn't mean it always gets better forever. It maybe doesn't, you know, especially at Christmas and holidays and Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever it is, Thanksgiving was always really special to you and that person. So subsequent holidays can be tough as well. You can be easily and constantly triggered. And it's not necessarily triggered by something somebody says. You know, if you have you know, and you look at the Christmas tree, boom, you know, or you look at the Hanukkah candle, boom, you know, and you driving down the street and it's dark now when you get off work and it's all the lights are on and boom. So you're constantly being triggered by everything. So you have to be able to learn how to, like Tracy said, I'm triggered. You just have to slow down. I have to calm myself down and try not to dwell on the loss as much as I can. But you will be constantly and easily triggered. And so just be aware that that's going to happen. You know, and learn how to manage it. Like with all grief, loss, and trauma, there's sadness, you know, there's anxiety, you know, there's like, I'm just anxious. I don't know why. Why am I anxious? What am I worried about? What's the worst case scenario? I'm, you know, just worried something's going to happen. But this is the thing that happens too with grief and loss and trauma. You know, there's a guilt thing, you know, and for some reason, whenever there's a trauma or a loss, guilt is there. And I don't know, there's probably some kind of evolutionary reason for the guilt, whatever it is, it's a loss. Even if you've lost a pet, you feel guilty. Well, I should have lost that. I don't know. You know, it doesn't matter what kind of loss it is, or you know, I should have done. You know, we talk to students that have been sexually assaulted. Well, I shouldn't be allowed to come over to my house. No, it's him. It's the problem. You know, you got to like try to avoid guilt, but for some reason, guilt is there, and the idea is being able to acknowledge, oh yeah, that's part of loss. Yeah, I should have been over to the house more, or I should have this, or I should have that. I could have this, I could have that. Okay, that's painful. It's a little hurt. And the idea with grief, loss, and trauma is to avoid dwelling on it. We have 4 words for it: overthinking it, dwelling on it, ruminating on it, perseverating on it. That means you're not managing the loss. You get all your time is on doing those 4 things around the loss. But acknowledging, hey, I feel guilty and it's painful, but it's really not my fault. And I'm gonna move on. You know, I'm gonna just not get stuck there. But when you see it, noticing. With trauma, you'll get flashbacks, right? If anybody's been traumatized in one way or another, you'll get flashbacks. Oh, something triggers it, and there you are again. You see this with veterans all the time, but we also deal with people who've been sexually assaulted, people who've been in a major car wreck, or, you know, flashbacks. People just like, whoa, you're almost there. You know, sometimes you really are there, depending upon the severity, or you'll have nightmares. And so, like I said before, anything can trigger that, you know, during the holidays. So just being aware, ooh, these are like normal reactions to trauma and grief and loss, and they're more easily triggered during the holidays, unfortunately. You feel emotional pain with loss, right? So we want to let you know, again, let people know what you need and lower expectations of yourself. You've had a loss. You don't have to cook the turkey. You don't have to all the things that you feel like you have to do. Lower expectations of you, of yourself, and of other people. Expect there to be times when you're out of sync. So you may, at one point, feel like laughing about something, but somebody else might be in a situation where they're feeling guilty, or they're feeling sad, or they're feeling just this tremendous grief about it. And now you're in the mood where you're laughing. Humor is really important. you know? But sometimes you feeling in a happy mood is not your humorous mood or whatever, you're not in the same on sync. So that's okay. What we want you to be able to do is to be able to acknowledge that you may not be in sync with everybody in the room, or everybody in your family, or everybody in general. You know, you might be feeling happy, you know, right now, even though you just lost somebody, or you may be feeling really grievous, and somebody else is like in, you know, they're laughing about all the things that happened with Uncle Dave. You know, oh yeah, but Uncle Dave might have been your favorite uncle, you know, for instance, and you're just feeling really sad, or you might, you know, so just. In other words, you may not be in sync with everybody around you. Just be aware of that and try to read people and try to sync up with them as much as you can, but you may not be able to. Grief and loss can include loss through divorce and children's loss. So, if you're in a divorce and you're going into holidays, whether it's this year, it's first year or not, there's a loss there, right? Because nobody died, but you used to be all together and right? But now it's like, well, kids are going there from morning and going here at night, or Christmas Eve, or Hanukkah a couple of nights, or so. Just be aware that children's loss is really tough during divorce, right? Or step families, you know. And your loss too. So this is a different kind of loss, and not necessarily somebody passed away, but the way things were is no longer the way things are. And being able to accept that, so to speak, and synthesize that into how you're going to manage, you know, the holidays. We can go on and on for a lot of time on that, but these are other tips, you know. Try random acts of kindness, giving small tokens of gratitude. Gratitude is one of the keys to happiness, right? To be grateful for what you have, that you can walk, that you can talk, that you know, having some gratitude, you know, get hot water and not everything else. You know, just being able to get some perspective on things is really helpful. Instead of being envious of people that have more than you, which leads to unhappiness. You know, gratitude leads to happiness. You know. But just giving small tokens, you know, and you don't have to either. But believe me, you know this. I know you guys know this better than anybody. When you give something away to somebody, it makes you feel good. You know, but like, well, that should be a loss. No, it's actually a gain for you. You actually feel good doing it. But you don't want to like spend $100 on everybody either. You know, I had one student I just talked to last night. She said, well, I spent $100 on everybody. I don't have it, but well, bro. You don't need to spend $100 on everybody, you know. So it's like giving small tokens, doing random act of kindness can really make you feel better, as well as other people. There's been some studies that show when you watch somebody give a random act of kindness authentically to somebody else, do a random, you feel better. If just watching, if it's authentic and that person appreciates it, when you watch that, you go, wow, I feel better. You know, so they do these like studies in universities and stuff, but just you doing that makes you feel better, makes the other person feel better as well. And plan ahead, you know, as much as possible. And it's not like you have to map out every single day of the holiday, but just doing some planning ahead so it's not just chaos, it's not just everything's happening. You have some things, like I said, that you want to do, that you and your family want to do, that you're going to do, a couple of things, and there's a couple of expectations, set limits, you know, just some planning ahead, starting today. Take responsibility for your mood. Tracy kind of hit on this today. That's telling the truth. I learned a lot from you. I've been practicing the wrong for you. Like, oh yeah. But you can always learn, right? It doesn't matter what, you know, you can always learn something. You know, but taking responsibility for your mood, you can't make your family responsible for your mood. You have to be nice to me or I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be cool unless everybody does what I think they have to do. You know? You have to take responsibility for your mood. And so one of the things I do is like, all right, one of the ways I'm gonna get in the mood, we're gonna do the Christmas tree, or I'm gonna turn on that Irish music. That's what hits me. When I get that Irish Christmas music, like all of a sudden I slot into it. Here we go. So in fact, I think it starts us out. But take some responsibility for making it.
I have a question and a comment on that one. So one of our traditions, I'm divorced, I'm with my mother now.
What do you want to talk about?
I definitely know my husband decided to leave me when I was pregnant with my third child.
Hey,
So they were very, very young,
yeah,
when I had to start being a mom.
okay.
And so our tradition was to go get the Christmas tree, right? So I go get the Christmas tree, and one year I came back, and every year I bought each of my kids an ornament, dated, and they had their own little box of ornaments that they put on the tree. So I wrapped the tree in, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna decorate the tree, and they didn't want to do it. And so I put the lights on, I did all the other stuff, and then it was time to do the ornaments, and they were busy playing, which is really weird, because when we were kids, we totally ran into that. And so I just said, you know what, I'm not doing the tree anymore. I said, I go out, I get the tree, I'm breaking my back, bringing it in, I put the lights on, all you have to do is put your little box ornaments on, you won't do it. They stepped right up. They stepped right up, they put them on, and they've never given me trouble after.
Okay, well, that's one way to do it.
Take control.
Yeah, and the other way to do it is, my kids did the same thing, like, I did, because when I grew up, man, that was the thing to do, and my kids go, yeah, I'll put them in. And I finally realized, I'm doing it for me, because when I come home, this is just me, so this may not be everybody else, but when I come home and the lights are on and the trees are up and things like, I get this little, so it's not, and when the kids come over, because they don't live with they go, ooh, that's cool with that, but it's like for me now, it used to be for the kids, and now it's like I realize it's for me, and if they like it, great. If they don't, so what? So, and I've got, I've got a clever switch where, if I'm first one home, one switch turns into going, like Chevy Chase in the movie. So it's like, it just makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
So taking responsibility for your mood is good, but also teaching the kids that, hey, you will feel better and you will get this little sense of accomplishment when you've done it. And so that's another key to happiness, is having a sense of accomplishment. So what you're doing is helping them to see, well, this has some importance. And when I do it, you know what, I put that one up, I put that one up, or there's a picture of you there, so yeah. So there's other ways to manage your mood, and help the kids manage their mood as well. So, try attentional affiliation. This is one of the things that I'm trying to develop in my brain is intentional affiliation is something that because of the COVID, everybody's been isolated for, all the time we know been isolated. And what's happened with youth especially, but all of us to some degree, we've sort of gotten into this kind of, it's not really a rut as much as just kind of this groove, I stay off, I sort of, I'm good. But what happens with that is you sort of lose your social, skills. And so a lot of the students that we work with, they remember those years between 19 and 20, when you were 19 to 22 or 18 to 22, how much you developed socially in those 3 or 4 years. These kids haven't done that. They've been in their house the whole time. So whether they're the last year of high school, or sophomore or first year, so it's really hard. It's like a stretch for them to reach out and get involved and get to know somebody new. And even most of their classes are online. So they don't even get that chance. And remember, I don't know how many went to college, but you remember in college where you met people in the classroom and you talk to them and then you walk with them to the cafeteria and you argue over political or philosophy or whatever like that. And then you saw them the next day and then by the end of the semester, you were friends, you know, with at least 4 or 5 people in that classroom, you know, that's not happening. So they're not getting that, you know, and so what I'm suggesting to students and everybody else who wants to listen is you have to be intentional about affiliation. You have to intentionally go to the Santa Club and make friends. So you guys already know this, but I practiced what I pledged the other day. I had a gig at a yacht club, and I knew one person at the yacht club, the person that, you know, got me the gig. But I go, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm just going to intentionally try to meet one of these guys. So I just started talking with him, and it turns out, you know, he worked for the government. He'd gone all over Africa, getting water in his villages in the middle of like he'd sailed everywhere, like wow. But before he was just some old guy in the corner, you know. So if you know, now he's a friend of mine because now we talk, you know, and so same thing with clubs. I'm teaching students or encouraging students, you know, get into a club, whether it's Active Minds or GSA or the Trans Alliance or African American Club or Parks and Recreation, hiking, but whatever. So you spend some time getting to know somebody. So Sierra Club's mine, you know, my favorite. We running out of time?
Yeah, it's like the babysitters.
Okay.
Over 12:30.
Okay, these are just some tips.
They won't leave. They won't leave. Yes. Our commitment, our agreement with them.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going a little long here. Okay, just embrace other families' traditions. You know, other people have stuff. Prioritize. You know, go to your grandkids or your kids' show, right? Yeah. Just think that, you know, have a cup of Christmas tea, just sit down on this sort of thing. Volunteer is always really good for helping. And like Tracy said, talk to a therapist. Here's some local resources. Personal counseling program at COC, the Be the Difference, SCB.org. Is that great resources, every kind of resource you can think of. Suicide crisis line is now 988. Crisis text line 741-741. Like Tracy said, faith-based leaders is always another good place to go. And these 2 apps are free for anybody who lives in LA County. Headspace and I Prevail. You can get those. And there's some stuff up here. Take one of these, stress reduction. All the mental health resources in Santa Clarita Valley. Do I have time for a song?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Talk about prioritizing. Okay. So the story, I don't know if you're going to work with this.
Do you want me to take it off?
Okay. So the story behind this is my father passed away in February of 2001. Lois probably remembers it. And you remember what happened else that year? 2001 was 911, right? And right after 911 was hardly remembered by anybody. Dominican airline went down out of New York on the way back to the Dominican, right during the holiday season. So one of the ways you manage grief and stress and stuff in general is to do something you really love. And when you're really feeling really at your worst or your best, that's the time to write. That's the time to paint. Tracy's an artist, as you know. So it's the time to do something because you're going to be able to access something deep down inside, you know. And other people may be able to relate to it or not, but you've done what you've done to take care of yourself. So as the Christmas in 2001 started coming up, it was the first Christmas without my father, right? So this is called First Christmas Without You. So this could make this may make you cheerful. It may bring up feelings and thoughts, and just so be aware. But sometimes it's just, well, let's go on. First Christmas without you, don't know how to pray. Here is my gift in song. I know you're in heaven, please show me the way. If you hear this, please sing my along. You're with grandpas and grandmas, mothers and dads, all your friends who give love Christmas cheer. Merry Christmas without you doesn't seem right. Keep waiting for you to appear. Trees in the window, kids in the beds, and the visions dance all around. They wish as I do, like a room without rent, like the rain when there's snow on the ground. Without you, I know that you love your family, I'll be home. We're all here without you, keeping alive your tradition here so long. Trees in the window, kids in their beds, and the visions dance all around. They miss you as I do, like a ring without thread, like the rain when there's snow on the ground. Trees in the windows, kids in the beds, and their visions dance all around. They miss you as I do, like a ring without thread, when there's snow on the ground. Now angels all singing your favorite tune, maybe you can still hear me play. Merry Christmas without you, wherever you are, I still love you on this Christmas day. And thank you for hearing me. Thank you very much. So, yeah, that makes me feel good. So that's all I got to say. I'll take any questions if you have time. I'll be around.